Minister Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I didn't want to interrupt the member while he was speaking, but I do want to take a point of order that all members of this House should be addressed correctly, and on a number of occasions during the previous member's speech he referred to Dunn, Key and Banks. They are actually the Right Honourable John Key, the Honourable John Banks and the Honourable Peter Dunn, and also the three members of the Maori caucus, who are the Honourable Peter Sharples, the Honourable Tariana Turia and Te Ururoa Flavel, and they are entitled to be addressed by their full names too.
Well, I don't need any help from Ms. Bowler. She's absolutely correct, and I shouldn't have let it go, but I did, because I didn't think there was any malice in it, but I take the point that the Minister's made.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, I think you also know that to take that point of order to be taken at the time and not after the speech, and therefore the point of order was at the time it was taken out of order.
Thank you, Mr Mallard.
Speaker.
I call the Honourable Member Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What a joy it's been to stand in this House or sit in this House this afternoon and listen to some people with a knowledge of agriculture. Agriculture, I'll get to you in a minute, Andrew Williams. Agriculture, of course, Mr Speaker, produces 70% of the cash income of this country. And to listen to the Honourable Kate Wilkinson, Michael Woodhouse and Chris Ockenvale and John Hayes in particular, speaking about agriculture, despite the fact that Michael Woodhouse, of course, comes from Dunedin and in fact the worst MP from Dunedin for 50 years is interjecting right now, Mr Speaker. This, Mr Speaker, is the big week in agriculture in New Zealand, and we had to wait until we got to Reno Turakatini-Sullivan before we got a mention of agriculture from the opposition. Mr Speaker, that pretty much sums up the attitude of the opposition to agriculture. As I said in the beginning of my few words tonight, Mr Speaker, this is one of the big weeks for agriculture in this country as we showcase ourselves to the rest of the world through the National Field Days at Mystery Creek. And John Calder, the National Field Days CEO, says, and I'll quote him, "Field Days' focus has always been on the advancement of New Zealand, agriculture on the domestic and now the global stage." Mr Speaker, in the last week, we've had some pretty significant events in agriculture. Last night, the Meat Industry Association held a function in Wellington where we heard from Bill Falconer about the impact that the PGPs are having on agriculture and particularly the meat industry. Some $658 million, as we've heard tonight or this afternoon, have been invested in these PGPs already by the government and their partners. I think it's fantastic, Mr Speaker. It's doing a great job for us. We've also had Fonterra in the last couple of weeks bring out their $7 payout for next season, which is hugely encouraging for our dairy industry and will make a massive difference to the income going round in rural New Zealand. Mr Speaker, some 3 weeks ago, the government, through our Finance Minister Bill English, presented a budget to ensure New Zealand's future, a budget that builds on the last 4 financial statements by the Minister and gives New Zealanders the confidence to invest in growth and subsequent jobs. This, Mr Speaker, is what keeps agriculture going in New Zealand. We have been through an extremely challenging few years where almost all comparable economies have suffered from zero growth or shrinkage. Through the actions of this government, we've continued to grow and trade with great success in a world challenged by recession. Our country's statistics speak for themselves. Before getting on to the real business today, I want to comment on what I see as an increasing use of what I can only term industrial sabotage of New Zealanders' futures. We saw it with the power scheme called New Zealand Power, advanced by the Greens and Reds, a policy which does nothing to address the challenges facing rural New Zealand and the distribution challenges our lines companies face, particularly the vast rural networks. There is no doubt this was a cynical and high-risk attempt by the opposition to undermine government policy at some cost to the public purse. Mr Speaker, we've heard Kennedy Graham going on this afternoon at length about the climate change proposals of the Greens and the cost this will impose on our consumers in New Zealand. Any savings that they might have got through their power scheme will be well eaten up by those charges. We're now seeing the Greens scaremongering over rehabilitated land farms in Taranaki, drilling in Tararua, etc. Again, highly unethical and typical of a party who will do anything for a headline. If there was scientific evidence of a problem, we would be the first to support their accusations, but there is not. The co-leader of this party has long been anti-dairy farming and anti-Fonterra. The New Zealand farmer, for the most part, is more green by far than the Greens, and it's time the party stopped sticking the knife in at every opportunity and work with the people who really do understand the environment and will make the single biggest positive difference to New Zealand in the future. Mr. Speaker, I want to move very briefly on to roads of national significance, and we've heard Andrew Williams harping on over there for some time about rural roads. Thank you. I find the opposition to this, again, from the other side of the House, absolutely baffling. Anyone who understands transport, and he clearly doesn't, would realise that it's no good fixing the hose if the tap's not working. You must first ensure the trucks can get there before sending them off on the journey. This policy will provide the biggest boost to our export-led economy when completed of all of our proposals. Once RONS is completed, it will enable the councils and government to get on with the roads that join the puzzle up, allowing our logs, milk and meat to get to the market quicker and better. And as someone who uses State Highway 3 quite often, in fact it runs through my electorate, it's doing very well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the time for this debate has expired. The House now comes to consideration of the report of the Privileges Committee